things came to picture. They and over time they have evolved. So there is some difference between traditional programming and machine learning. As you all might have written different programs, simple C, C++ programs involving functions. You might be giving those parameters to different functions, and then some calculations are performed and it returns some output. So that's what happens in traditional programming. You have given some values, you have given the program to the computer executes it and gives you some output. That uh, the same kind of thing happens in machine learning. A program is output. This program is called an ML model. So ML model is your agent which takes decisions based on the interpretation of data. You feed data as input features. This is a very key term. Inputs are called input features here, the data, and output is the output labels. So you will classify your output into some class. That's called the output label. So to our problems, we get the ML model as a result. That's how machine learning is different from traditional programming. Based on different kind of problems and the output we get, there is sorry, based on the different types of problems and outputs, machine learning can be categorized into three different categories. Afroz, are you recording?
Yeah, the session is being recorded.
Oh, thanks for the information. Different types of machine learning based on our problem and the kind of outputs we get. Machine learning can be categorized into three simple parts: supervised learning, unsupervised, and reinforcement learning. We will look at each one of these in some detail. Okay. Whoever is that, please can you mute?
Vignesh, you might need to unmute yourself. Yeah, your mic is.
Now it's
Yeah,
fine.
yeah.
So we'll just one here. We'll continue with supervised learning. We are given a data set and we already know what our correct output should look like. So this is a kind of methodology where you will get some specific value or a specific thing like true, false, or something which describes describes in a single word or what your output has been. So having the idea that there is a relationship between input and output. So whatever input you are giving, the output will vary according to that. So these kind of problems are basically when you need a very specific output, whether this given thing is true or false, or you want a specific value. For example, if you want to you have a model which predicts tomorrow's temperature. So let's say it predicts 35 degrees Celsius, and that's a very specific value. So this kind of algorithms, there are two further divisions of supervised learning, that is regression and classification. So regression, it estimates the continuous values. Yes. So you are given a graph, say XY graph, and it has some slope. So with that slope and the line, you can extend the line and maybe you can predict what the next value will be. And that's one which throws a very specific value. It's based on independent variables. It's used for finding out relationship between variable and forecasting. So you forecast something and the variables are modified in some order and it throws an output, and it's a real valued. So another example is like you've seen things where you might have seen your cameras having that kind of feature where you can point your camera towards a person, and that will show the age of that person. And second method is classification. You group your output into some class. So maybe if I am not interested in what the temperature is tomorrow, for example. So I am interested to know whether it will be hot or whether it will be cold. Now it's not like it might have the feature of having 35 degrees Celsius as an output, but the category has to be very clear whether this temperature will signify heat or cold. So that's how we can classify our problem. That's why the classification of these supervised learning problems is based on outputs. You might valued or undervalued. You have to put that into a specific category according to some number. So that classification is an example of classification supervised learning. So there are different algorithms associated with it. Regression algorithms, linear regression, support vector regression, and decision tree regression. Random forest. So our primary focus in the hands-on session will be on linear regression and the decision tree regression, which Afroz will later throw some light on, and some classification algorithms like logistic regression, k-nearest, support vector, and some random forest classification. This comes in both the random forest comes in both these. And we don't have to go into much detail of how these algorithms exactly are designed, because we can use libraries for most of these things. And then we can move on to unsupervised learning. So unsupervised learning has almost all the ingredients of supervised learning, but we in advance don't know what our output will look like. We'll have little idea or no idea of what the output will look like. It can be some 3 or 4 elements with some frequency, or some small structures, a table or something, but we don't know what is going to be the output. Yes, we can definitely analyze the algorithms and find what kind of outputs we can get, but how the operation on variables is performed, we don't get that. This can be derived by clustering the data based on relationships among the variables. So clustering is one method which is employed heavily in unsupervised learning. You put the same kind of objects into the same category and different kind of objects separately. If something doesn't match with all the match with any cluster, it forms its own cluster. So these are some pointers on clustering. So this you can see this picture, the original unclustered data. So this whole set of blue dots, and then we have applied some condition for clustering that these points
Vignesh, your voice got muted. Oh yeah, am I audible? Okay, I guess like he's facing some issues. Yeah, let me check. Okay, so till that time, if you guys have any question, you can ask. I guess he's facing some issues. So anyone, if you guys have any doubts, you can unmute yourself and ask a question.
Hello,
Yes. Say your name and what your question is.
my name is Dinesh.
Okay. You
Is
have any?
Azure work like AWS in a browser?
Yeah, it works like if you have used Google Colab, so it works the same way. Like, yeah, I'll be showing you that. So yeah, you can check.
Okay.
Yeah. Any other questions related to the topic we have covered till now?
No.
Okay. So Vignesh, are you there? Mm, is his voice audible to everyone, or is it just me?
No, sir, you are audible.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess like his voice is muted. Oh, okay, wait. I'll check with him.
Hello, am I audible now?
Yeah, you're audible. Actually, your mic went out. So
Hello, am I audible?
yes, you're audible.
Oh, thank you.
So you guys,
Oh,
like, you may start from unsupervised learning algorithms, or just start with unsupervised learning and just continue with that.
Afroz, where we when the voice cut, so that I can start back from that point.
Start from unsupervised learning part. So
Hello.
yeah, am I audible? Just start from unsupervised learning path. So,
Hello.
yeah, am I audible to you?
Yes, sir.
Uh, I guess it's
Oh,
like
thank you.
speaker
Thank you
is
for
yeah.
telling me. We'll start back from unsupervised learning.
Yeah. Is my voice audible to you? No, I guess it's not. Okay. Let him start with unsupervised learning, then we can continue.
Okay. So, okay. So unsupervised learning, we have little or no idea of what our results look like. So our method to solve the problems is based on clustering. We can derive a structure of how our output will look like, where we don't necessarily know what kind of effect is going on the variables. So we can derive the structure from data, but not the variables. Else. Okay, so I will continue. Sorry for the fumbles. I'm really sorry for that. We have, yes, we are an unsupervised learning. Clustering is the task of grouping a set of objects in such a way that objects in the same group are more similar to each other than in other groups. So we categorize similar objects in similar places like this. So for every single point, there is some criteria which say x plus y equal to z. Based on that value of z, we will put these points into a cluster. So we have from an unclustered data to a clustered data which has green, blue, and red kind of different clusters. So unsupervised learning algorithms, there are different unsupervised learning algorithms like k-means. Afroz, am I audible?
Yes, you're audible. Perfect.
Okay. So k-means clustering, hierarchical clustering, and a priori algorithms, and FP tree. So k-means clustering is basically a division of a division of the data set into clusters. So you have three pick centroids from the data set, and wherever points are the closest to the centroid, that's grouped into that cluster. So similarly, hierarchical clustering is one, and then there are a priori algorithms. So a priori algorithms have business applications. Say you have some business, and you are selling a number of different items. And these items are going to be grouped together. Say bread, milk, and cheese. So these may be frequently brought together, or something like computer, keyboard, and pen drive. So all these items which you can group together, that kind of data set is returned in a priori algorithm. So a frequent item set is it's called a frequent item data set. So these kind of sets are returned by a priori algorithms and help you in identifying what you can put into a bunch and what you can actually not do for a bunch. So maybe if you are selling a mouse along with bread and cheese, maybe nobody will purchase the whole package, saying that why should I pay for the mouse when I want bread and cheese? And similarly, one more frequent item data set exists, that is FP tree. So FP tree is a tree where you have every node representing a different frequent item data set. So you will have, you might be given with an example where A, B, C, D, E, F. There are 6 letters, and you form different clusters. Different strings: A, B, C, F, A, B, D, E, A, B, D, F, and a different kind of strings. So all these strings can be represented in one tree in the terms of numbers. But in the FP tree. Am I audible now?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, audible.
Am I audible now?
Yes, you're audible.
Okay. So what is the best move for the black piece? So for black, the best move is you can't say. You might be having any move in this case. So what we do in such situations, where we have to analyze a given input. Is the given input, and according to that, we make some different moves. So every time the input will change, the board will change, and the best decision for that move will change. So you have a point where you have to maximize the cumulative gains. Unsaid manner, but everywhere in this game of chess, you maximize your cumulative gain. And the one who maximizes the cumulative gain at almost every move wins the game easily. That's the whole point of this thing. So we can, with this example, we enter into reinforcement learning. So it's talking about suitable actions to maximize reward in a particular situations. So employed by various software and machines to find the best possible behavior or path to take in a specific situation. Unlike unsupervised or supervised learning, it does not have any answer. In the absence of any data set, it learns from experience. The agent determines what to do, what task to perform, and interpreter only sees whether it's being performed or not. So some applications of reinforcement learning are business strategy planning, industrial automation, chess games, obviously, as we saw, self-driving cars, and yes, this has a number of different ethical problems when it comes to reinforcement learning, like keeping safety on top or reducing pollution. Many ethical problems are there with the reinforcement learning, and some applications of ML are as mentioned here. So virtual personal assistants like Microsoft Cortana, Alexa, predictions, video surveillance. Recently, I saw that some people have used ML to make some different cameras to analyze whether social distancing is being maintained or not. So these are some kind of applications of video surveillance. Email spam and malware filtering, obviously, that's one. Then game AI. Different games can be made. Online customer support. Yes, you can definitely teach the machine what kind of support the user is seeking, and it can respond according to that. With experience, this kind of models refine. Search engine result refining, product recommendations, as I said you in a priori. You might see many times in Amazon and Flipkart that they will recommend a number of products. When you are buying a laptop, you might be faced with the same ad of buying a laptop cover and online fraud detection. And I will stop here. Afroz will take you through linear regression and other important points, which will be for the hands-on session. And thank you, and sorry for the fumbles.
Yeah, so like, should I share my screen? Okay. Yeah. So is my screen visible to all?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So like just so is it visible? Like the presentation and all? Are you able to see linear regression on the screen? Yeah, okay. Yeah. So we talked about the applications of ML, and one of the most basic algorithms which is used to solve ML problems is linear regression. So linear regression is actually a supervised learning algorithm. So as you see, like in supervised learning, we are provided with both the features as well as the output or the labels. And like the supervised learning, our goal is to learn a function h, and the goal of that function is to map from h to x to y, where x is our input and y is our output. And the goal of like the hx is called a good predictor for the corresponding value of y. So we have to build that function from scratch, and our learning algorithms help us do that. And h is called as the hypothesis function. So this is one of the terms which is used. And I was talking about linear regression. So linear regression, it tries to explain the relationship between one or more variables using a straight line. So some of the functions can have a linear relationship. For example, if we plot the value of the amount of hours studied and the result that we get during the exam, so it will be a linear relationship, as like the more you study, the more marks you will get. So that is kind of a linear relation. So like most of the things can be explained using linear regression algorithm. So we have a training set, and this training set, it will we apply like training data will be provided with a training data, and we have to apply a learning algorithm to that data. And like am I audible to all?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay, like Vignesh is not able to hear me, right? Okay, so I'll just continue. Yeah, so we have a training data. We enter that training data to a learning algorithm, and this learning algorithm will train a function h, and this function h can later be used to like make predictions. So we, for example, input the size of the house x, and we'll when we feed that into our function, we get some output estimated price. So this is the labels. These are called as labels. These are called as features. So yeah. So this is the general equation for linear regression. If you guys are able to see it. So what happens is we have this is the equation for multiple linear regression. So there are two types of regression, like simple linear regression and multiple linear regression. In simple linear regression, you have a single predictor. Like for example, you have a single feature, and your output is only a single label. Whereas in multiple linear regression, you have multiple features, and you're trying to predict a single label. So that is the difference between both of them, and this is the equation. As you can see, this is the equation of a line. So if you guys have done geometry in 11, 12, so you can easily understand that. And these are terms which are used, like y is your dependent variable. So this is one of the terms which is used, like y is the dependent variable, and x is the your labels. Y is called the labels, and x is your features or independent variables, and y is your dependent variable. And b naught is your constant or intercept. So for example, if you put the value of uh, if you plot the graph, so this is the line which crosses the y-axis, cuts the y-axis. So that is the distance. This is the value of b naught. So this, all these, like the b naught, like the b1, b2, b3 till bn, are called as coefficients. So this will be calculated by our algorithm itself, and we don't need to do anything about that. So epsilon is the error. This is the residual error, and this is the difference between the actual and the predicted value. So yeah. So the objective is that, like for example, if you consider this example, so in this example we have x-axis and y-axis, and we have a bunch of dotted points. These are our data set. Like we plot a data set across a graph, and what we are trying to do, we are trying to, the objective is to get the best fit line, which represents the points. And when we draw this line, so we'll see that like the distance of this point from the line, distance of this point from the line, and what we are trying to do, we are trying to minimize these distances. So the best possible line will be such whose like the average squared vertical distances of the scattered points from the line will be the least. So we take this distance, we take that distance and square it, and we do the same things with multiple all of these points, and we sum that, and we're trying to minimize that. So best way to so this follows the principle of least squares method, and it is like nothing but the actual points. These are the actual values and the predicted values. So if we like draw a line over here and plot the same on the y-axis, so you'll see that it will be the predicted value of y. This is the actual value of y when you plot it from this point, but when you like draw a line over this and draw the same over the y-axis, it will be the predicted value. So you get the difference, square it, take the sum across all, and you're trying to minimize that, and we minimize that by taking the best possible values of the coefficients. So this is another algorithm. This will be a decision tree, and the goal of decision tree is to like it can be used. This is the algorithm which can be used for both regression as well as classification, and it breaks down the data set into smaller and smaller subsets. And at the same time, like the decision tree will be incrementally developed. So these are three parts, like the nodes, the edges, and the leaf nodes. And we'll be discussing about this and in the next with an example. And yeah, so like the nodes. So if you consider this is a decision tree classification example. Classification because like it is predicting the labels, like it is whether it is fit or unfit. So these are both categories. So it is classifying these outputs. So given the age of the person, we are trying to classify whether the person is fit or unfit. So this is a classification problem. So we have three things, like we talked about the nodes. Here, these are nodes, and nodes test the value of an attribute. Like if the age of the person is less than 30. So after doing that, so we have the edges which correspond to the outcome of a test, like age is less than 30, whether it is a yes or a no. If it is a yes, then it will check for another condition. This is another node, like it is testing the value for an attribute. And these are edges like yes or no, and these are leaf nodes. Leaf nodes represent the class of the outcome. So this is the unfit or the fit. So based on that, there can be like whether if the person is age is less than 30, whether if the answer is no, like it will go to the next node. If it will ask another question, like if the person exercises in the morning. So if the answer is less or no, yes or no, on the basis of that, it will categorize whether the person is fit or unfit. So yeah, that is decision tree. So one of the applications of decision tree is random forest, and it is one of the most important algorithms. Like you don't necessarily implement decision trees as such, but yeah, the implementations of decision trees and other algorithms is very important. So it is one of the important algorithms, and yeah, we'll discuss about this in the practical sessions. And yeah, this is the machine learning workflow. So you have a data set. You are trying to clean that data set. Like the data set can have noise, the data set can have values which are missing, it can have values which are like duplicated, redundant values, and we are trying to like clean those things. And we perform feature engineering, like we extract certain features which are important to us. Like all the features that we are provided within the data set are not that important, so it is important that we perform feature scaling. And once we have done that, we take that data set and we apply the learning algorithm. This can be any algorithm based on the data set, like it can be a regression algorithm, or classification algorithm, or a clustering algorithm based on whether it is supervised or unsupervised. And on the basis of that, we get a trained model. And once we get that trained model, we can apply that model to a new data set and check the score, like the accuracy, how much percentage it is, like is it a 99%, it is getting a 90% accuracy or 60% accuracy. So we can test that model and we can evaluate the model. So this is a machine learning process. And now it's time for the demo. So is my screen visible to you guys? Like for the hands-on session, I would like you guys to, if possible, you guys can log in into the account of like go to notebooks.azure.com and you can sign in and it will be difficult to follow along. Like actually, I'll be going through the notebook a bit fast. So I'll share with you guys one of the GitHub repos that I have, and you can see the notebook from that and practice through the same after the call. So like you won't be wasting your time. It is a long notebook, so it might be difficult for you guys to follow along. So I'm sharing the link to the GitHub repo through the chat, and you guys can clone that repo and run that Python Jupyter notebook. For the like how to work with Azure notebooks, I'll show you guys that. So go to this, like the notebooks.azure.com, and just you guys might need to sign in through your Microsoft account. So that is one thing. So once you have done the login, you can actually like there's certain features of this notebook, like all the projects that you'll be running will be like run. This is a simple Jupyter notebook, like which is hosted on Azure, like Microsoft's servers. So you don't need to create a local environment on your machine, and you don't necessarily need to install Jupyter notebook on your local machine. So I'll show you guys how to create a project. So first go to My Projects. Once you have signed in and go to My Projects, then go to New Project. Click on the New Project, and a window a window will open, and you need to enter the name of a project. So just
Screen is not
yeah, screen is not visible. Okay, okay,
Presentation.
yeah, it's still the presentation, I guess. Yeah. Okay. Is it visible now? Like, where did you guys lost it?
Yeah.
Did you guys the sign in and all? Did you guys get that? Like, go to notebooks.azure.com and like sign in through your account, and you can actually search Azure Notebooks. And the first link that opens, you can actually click on that link, and yeah, you can like click on sign in. I'm already signed in, so no need for that. And yeah, go to My Projects. For creating a new project, go to My Projects and click on New Project. So you can, yeah, and enter any project name. Like I'll enter ML session. So it will automatically, you can create, like you can make it public, initialize with README, and I'll make it public. So I'm just showing you guys how to work with this, and you guys can later, like I'll show you another notebook which has all those things. And yeah, so once you have created that, you made the project ML session, you click on this plus sign and then create a notebook. Then enter the notebook name. So this is like practice notebook. And once you have entered that, you can select the Python version. So Jupyter is actually like, it is one of the notebooks which is actually made for 3 languages. One is Python, one is R, and one is Julian, I guess. So that isn't the name actually, Julian, Python, and R. So you can actually choose the versions of Python you want to run the notebook into, and yeah, you can choose our F hash if you know it, but I'll choose Python 3.6. So once you have done that, just double click this and it will open a new window for you guys. So as you can see, it is just a simple Jupyter notebook. And if any one of you has used Google Colab, you might know like it is completely different. So in Google Colab, it is not easy, like you cannot form a directory structure, a file structure in that. You need to like upload that to Google Drive, then open it and things like that. So you can directly like do this in Jupyter Notebook, which is pretty cool. So like I'll enter the uh, uh, I'll run a few commands for you guys so you guys know like how does it work. So for running it, like you can click on this or you can simply press Shift Enter. So yeah, it shows hello world. So you can do like if you guys know Python. So yeah, so one of the prerequisites for the workshop is you must know Python. So yeah, you can perform the same things which you can do in Jupyter Notebooks, but this notebook will be hosted on Azure servers, and it is very much easier for you guys. Like you do not need to install Jupyter Anaconda on your local notebook, so it is all free for you guys. So you can do anything with it. And yeah, so I'll show you guys the notebook that we'll be going through during this session. And
Afroz, can you once please go through the steps after new project? Somebody has asked that question.
okay, so new project, like the project has been created, right? So you can like just click on this plus icon, go to notebooks, and yeah, a new notebook will be. They will ask you the name. Enter the name, anything like uh, anything. So project one, if I say, so just click on this Python 3.6 and you'll be good to go. Just click on new and a new project will be created. So after the project is created, you just double click on that IPYNB file and it will open this. Yeah. So if you guys like have been able to do follow the steps till this point, we can continue with the next notebook. And this will be a bigger notebook, so it might be difficult for you guys to follow along. So I would really recommend like whatever like the GitHub link I have shared, you guys can follow the things from that. And yeah, so I'll start with that and you guys can see. So I'll move to my projects. I have my Jupyter notebook like already and my project is already created. Let me find that first. So this one, let me see. Yeah, this is the one.
Afroz, guide through how that CSV file is imported.
CSV file, like yeah. So it is like given, like the curl command you can use, and this HTTPS. I'll talk about it, guys. Like this is the link to the file, and you can simply use the curl command to directly download that file into your Jupyter notebook. So this is like pretty cool. You don't need to like import that file, like upload it to Google Drive and things like that. You can simply use
You can do it from the file icon on the top also.
Yeah.
So that's for a local local
You can-
CSV file can be imported from there.
Yes. Yeah. So this is like the upload. Over here, you can from URL or from computer, you can directly do that. Add the CSV file from the computer as well. So that is pretty cool about it. So like I said, Python is one of the most popular languages for machine learning, AI, and things like that. And yeah, it has thousands of libraries. Like we'll be using NumPy, Pandas, Matplotlib, and scikit-learn. So you guys can see. So these libraries like scikit-learn, one of the good things about is that you don't need to create that model yourself from scratch. It will have certain libraries for you, and you can import those libraries and work through the models. And notebooks, Azure Notebooks, it is a cloud-based platform for building and running the Jupyter notebooks. And yeah, the environment is already created for you, so you just need to create the files and play with it. Just that. And it is a web-based solution, so you don't need to download Jupyter Anaconda, things like that. So yeah, the steps, like I said, import the data set, load the data set. Second process is pre-processing the data set, like cleaning the data, uh, feature extraction, and like applying the machine learning model is the third step. And fourth step is like evaluating and visualizing the data. So yeah, one of you were asking like how did I import the data, like downloaded a data set. So you can directly use a curl command for that. Curl command will actually like after curl command you can actually put the name of the URL. The dasho is one of the parameters, I guess, and yeah, flight.csv, what name you want to give to that file when it is like imported or downloaded. So yeah, so the curl is a bash command. You can directly execute a bash commands in Jupyter Notebook. So it is one of the features of Jupyter Notebook which really stands out. And yeah, you can upload the data set like that. And yeah, so we'll start with this. So I'm working with flight data.csv file. So this file, like it contains the data about a list of files and a list of flights. And yeah, so we have the month, we have the day, we have the tail number, like the of the flight and the origin and the arrival time. Like we'll discuss about these features. First, we'll import pandas and we'll import as PD and we'll use PD throughout to use pandas. So like we'll be using the read CSV to read the CSV file. So same read Excel, things like that. For Excel file, for CSV, we are using read CSV. So yeah, printing the first 5 rows using df head. And about the data frame, like data frame is a two-dimensional structure and like it can be different types, like it can be a database, a spreadsheet and things like that. So most commonly used is pandas. In dataset, like each of the rows represents a flight and it contains the information such as the origin, the destination, the departure time, and whether the flight will arrive on time or not. So our goal is to determine whether the flight will arrive on time or not. So that is a like whether it will be late or not late. So it is a classification problem. Uh, so we'll try to do that using a random forest classification. And data pre-processing, like we talked about this, cleaning our data. So this data set has 26 columns and you can like use the columns, import the columns using df.columns. And the important things like the year, month and date, the origin, the destination and the departure time and the arrival times. These are the important things. Like other things like the tail number, flight number, these things are not important. And you can like whether the flight is late by 15 minutes or more. So this answer will be given in terms of yes or no, 0 and 1. So this is a classification problem and this is what we are trying to predict. So yeah, so we have shown the columns. We know what columns we have in our data set. And we are trying like these are the features, these are called as the feature columns, and we want to keep those columns which are relevant to our data set. We will filter out the columns that are not necessary and have some missing values. So like another task is to eliminate those missing values and deleting the rows which like do not have any meaningful impact to our predictions. So one way to do that is to check whether we have any null values or missing values. So we can do that using df.isNull, and like if there are any values or any, like it returns true or false. It returns a Boolean value. So we know like once it returns true, like there is a missing value. And yeah, so we printed those values, like whatever values are missing. So here you can see like there are 11,231 missing values. So this is the size of the data set only, like size of the rows only. So this column was imported. This column is not necessary, like it has these many missing values and which is equal to the number of rows in the data set. So it got imported by mistake and we need to remove that. So we can drop that column and we use axis this is the name of the column. This is the axis. Axis equal to 1 means that we are dropping the column. If axis is equal to 0, it means we are dropping the rows. And we perform this function again and tells us what all are the missing values. So these are missing values again, and we need to fix that. And yeah, for the next step, we are trying to filter out the columns that aren't relevant to the predictive model. So like I said, these are the relevant columns, and the other columns, like whatever columns we have, we don't need that. So we'll be importing only those columns that are actually having an impact to our predictions. So we imported that, and yeah, so we again perform the isNull operation. We find that arrival delay 15, like it has 188 missing values. So we do df head, we see like what arrival delay has. It has zeros and ones. So zeros indicate like whether the flight will arrive on time or not, and ones indicate like whether the flight didn't arrive. So so if it is zero, the flight arrived on time, and if it is one, then the flight didn't arrive on time. There was a 15 minutes delay or more. So we do that, and we find the missing values, like showing the first rows which have missing values. So we see the rows. So this has NaN. So this is a not a number value, and this means that the data is missing. And it includes the flights that were cancelled and diverted. So we don't have values for that. So you can consider those flights as these flights have been cancelled, and you can put a value of 1 over there. So we have done that, and we use the fill NA, like for NaN, whichever columns have NaN in them, fill NA with in this column arrival delay with 1. So that is what we did. And once we did that, we were able to get this value, these values, and these values were filled, like 177 and 177. If you see here, that value has been filled. So the data set is cleaned, I guess. So once you have done that, what you need to do is apply machine learning. Prepared, So once you have done that, you need to further do some things which are important. Like if you see the departure time over here, there are like 4 values in some, and in some you have 3-digit values, 4-digit values. So this makes the process of machine learning a bit slower. So what you need to do is you need to apply quantization and binning. So this is one of the methods which helps us to reduce the the amount of data that we are feeding into our model, and reduce the time that it takes to process that data, and maybe like also help with the prediction accuracy. So if you see like 1030 would become 10, like if we would divide by 100. So we'll be dividing it by 100 to like round off to the nearest integer. And why we are doing that, we don't want our model to like worry about stupid things, like 1030 is the same as 1045. So both of these will have 10. So we don't really want to consider those minutes as such, and we want the model to be easy and much more easier to process. It should be able to process the data much faster and accurately. So yeah, it doesn't matter whether the flight leaves at 10:30 or 10:40. So we'll just it matters if 10:30 a.m. or 5:30 p.m. So it matters. The AM and PM matters, but does not the minutes. So we did that, and we'll be changing those values, like the destination and origin. You can see like there are categories for this. So we'll be using get dummies to get the categorical values, like the dummy variables. So we are printing the head, df head, the first 5 values, and we are importing like the math and performing binning. So what we have done is that index location, and we have iterated that, and we have for each of those rows, we have for CRS departure time, we have divided each of those values by 100. So what we see is 1905 has turned to 19, 1345 is turned to 13. So things like that, it has become much more easier for our model to for a machine to interpret. So we again printed that df head, got the first 5 rows. Then we have to deal with this origin destination. So our model will not be able to recognize, like a machine only recognizes numbers, and these are like characters. So we won't be able to work with it if they are in this form. So we'll need to convert it into form of dummy variables. So we have done that. Like if you see origin at ATL, so this is one of the locations. So it has converted that into dummy variables, each of those values. So you have added like origin, MSP, so things like that. If the value is like present, so it will show 1. Other values it will show 0. If it is like for the next it is not there, so it is 0, like that. So finally, like we have done the pre-processing. Like pre-processing step is more than 80% of the problem in machine learning. So that is very important. And yeah, now the steps are much more easier. Like you apply the testing, like separate it into train test split, 80% training set and 20% test set. You do that with the help of train test split. You import this, and you will make the training set like the X train, X test, Y train, Y test using this. And yeah, so the test size is given like 0.2 is the test size. So on the basis of that, you will get the train and the test set. Yeah, so these are the values that have been created. Training set and a test set. Now we apply the machine learning algorithm to it. So this is a classification model. One of the problems that we were facing today was that most of the mails got classified as spam when we are sending the mails. So this is a binary classification problem. And it is a classic problem which Google uses to classify the emails. So it might consider some as spam and some as not spam based on the content. So we'll be doing that, and we'll be applying random forest classifier. So one of the things about random forest is that it is an implementation of decision trees. And what you'll be doing is that you'll be taking a bunch of decision trees, like a number of them, and you'll be they will be randomly classifying the model based on their like own interpretation, and you'll be averaging all those decision trees and using them, and this will be done by random forest itself. And like it is a pretty good model, and it limits overfitting. Like one of the problems with decision trees is that it overfits the model. So the model will work well with your training set, like it will get around 90%, 95% accuracy. And when you test that model, you will get around 60, 65% accuracy. So it limits overfitting. Random forest does that very well. So if you see the Kaggle competitions and all, most of the times you're using either random forest or XGBoost. XGBoost is very popular. So it is an implementation of decision trees. So yeah, so we imported this using like from sklearn Ensemble. Ensemble is one of the classes, and from that we import the random forest classifier. A random forest classifier is one function, and we pass like a random state 13 to it. And there are various parameters which you can like arguments which you can tune in. And yeah, so I'll talk about a few of them, like the n estimators, like specifies the number of trees like there are in the decision tree, and the max depth, which specifies the maximum depth of the decision tree. And yeah, so these are other parameters which you want to play with when you are implementing the same notebook. And so we have what we have done. We have imported the model, like the model has been imported. Now we are fitting this model to our training and X train and Y train. So what we are trying to do, we are putting the training data, applying the algorithm to that data. Then we get the model. So we will use the predict method to test, like to get the like push as input as a X test, and X test when it is like fed into the model, it will give us the predicted values. So you can see like if you want, you can actually print it out. No, actually I need to run the notebook again. So okay. So yeah, you can see like predicted will create the predictions for you based on the X test value, and you can then text like check the score using this. model.score. So how many values our model has been able to correctly guess. So yeah, you use the score for that. So you get like around 86% accuracy, which is pretty good for a model. But we need to consider whether it is really the correct accuracy or not. For that, we use something which is called as AUC, ROC AUC curve, area under receiver operating characteristic curve. So like it quantifies how much a model actually made the predictions correctly or not. So yeah, let me see. So we import that using metrics, like from the metrics class, import ROC AUC score, and we do that. I'll need to run this model again, I guess. Okay. So the meaning of yeah, it is running, I guess. Yeah. What we are trying to do with the AUC ROC AUC curve is that we are trying to check whether a model like correctly has will work with other testing data as well. So sometimes it happens that there's a bias with the testing data that we have, and this this helps us check whether like the model is really working or not. So yeah, so what we did, like we got a 0. Yeah, I'll zoom in. Okay, so what we got, so we got 0.86% accuracy for a model, which is pretty good if you like don't know if you don't really consider the testing data on which we tested the model. So we got this. Okay, that's fine. So what we do is we apply the ROC AUC score and we get the predicted values. So once we do that, we get an accuracy around 0.67%. So why is it so low? So the score method like reflects how many times, how many items in the test set of the model have been correctly predicted. So this score is actually screwed because the data set that we trained the model on had more rows representing the on-time arrivals than the rows representing the late arrivals. So this can happen. And on the basis of that, you can have a highly biased algorithm. And based on the imbalance, you are more likely to like get correct results. You're more likely to get incorrect results, or the algorithm will be more biased. So this helps us with that, and it really allows us to test the model or train the model again with correct data set. So we have taken this into account using this ROCAUC. And this is one thing, like the true positives, the true negatives. These are two values which you need to consider, like the diagonals, the PP and the NN. So these are correctly predicted by our model, and all of this are incorrectly predicted. So yeah, this is the confusion matrix, like what I'm showing to you. We have predicted using the confusion matrix. So we got like around 188, like 1882 and 51, which got correctly predicted. So we add these and divide by the total number of columns that we had, or in the test set. So that is one. So these, like what I told you, like the upper right and the lower left corners are important. And the other measures which you can look into are called as precision and recall. The formula for recall is that this, like precision is this and recall is this, accuracy is this. So you can test like the true positive is here, the actual results, like total number of results. So true positives and false positives. True positives, false positives, you add these, get the result. This is your precision. For the recall, do this. True positives we have here, and true positives with false negatives, and do that, you get the recall. And similarly, you get the accuracy, like I talked about it. So yeah, the precision would be like if you are provided with 3 on-time arrivals and 3 delayed arrivals, you can, like, the two have been predicted correctly. The on-time arrivals have been predicted correctly, but like the other 2 delayed arrivals are not correctly predicted. So the precision will be 50% because like 2 out of 4 have been classified and were actually were on time, and the later will be like the recall will be 67%, like you predicted 2 out of 3 flights like correctly, so they are right on time. So that is 60% recall, 67% recall. So you can directly use the precision score from sklearn.metrics library, and you can find the precision score for a model. So it is pretty good, like 0.99. Good, that's great. And that recall score you can also get using the same metrics class, and you get that. So you just pass in the Y-train and your predictions, like the train predictions, which you have calculated before. So now we need to like visualize this. So important libraries for this is Matplotlib and Seaborn, and you import this as this, and yeah. So we'll plot the ROC AUC curve and we'll get that. Okay. What happened? Yeah, so this is the curve which I was going to show you guys. So this is the like the curve plot, and like the dotted line shows that this is there is a 50-50% chance of obtaining the correct result, and the blue line represents the accuracy of a model. So like it bulges, like it forms a bulge, and yeah, it shows that the true positives are like with the false positive rate, the true positive rate is increasing much more faster. So yeah, so we'll be predicting the delays. So we'll build a function which takes in this departure date time, the origin, and the destination. So using that, we have built a function. So this is the last part, I guess. And yeah, so what we have done, we have imported datetime from datetime. So this is one of the libraries to work with dates and times. And like this is, we have applied the exception handling. We have done the month, day of week. We have extracted that from our date time, like the whatever input that we got from the function, like when the function was called. And yeah, so we converted them into uppercases. Then we created a list. Within the list, we have created a dictionary. And within the dictionary, we are storing these values, like the month, the day of week, and things like that. And here we are applying some, like, if the origin is this, then like put the value as 1, or else you can put the value as 0. So if you guys can see through it, and yeah, we have worked through it like for all the locations and destinations. So yeah, so it takes in a date time, origin of like the airport origin code, the destination airport, and the return value is 0 and 1, which is really the classification value, like we are classifying it. So 2 categories, 0 and 1. So we have done that. We have called the function. We got an accuracy of about 0.6. Then we called it again, source, destination, date, different source and destination, like same source, destination, but different time. So we got 0.8. Yeah. So yeah, again with a different destination, we got 1. So it was able to predict the value, but yeah, so this is one of the, like on October 1. So this is the value, like predictions that we got from our data set. So, okay. So So what we have done is we have plotted this. Okay. So we have the labels like for October 1. So we are trying to predict between this date, so and so. We are trying to predict whether like model will be able to tell on this day whether should we board the flight or not. So we can save our time. Like we already know that the flight is going to be late and we don't go. So this is going to save us time and money. Pretty cool. Yeah. So this is one of the like values we have created. We have arranged that. We have used a range for that, and we have plotted this. We are smart. Yeah, we have plotted this, and we know like the probability of on-time arrival. And on the basis of this graph, like I see like we can board the flight on October 4. So we have pretty good chance like the flight will not be late. So we can board the flight on that date. So yeah, that is it, I guess. Like you can further modify the code. These are the exercises that I would really recommend you guys do on your own, and you can modify the code and for this like, leaving from JFK to MSP, and these are name like codes for the airports. So these are source and destination. This is the time and this is the date, and you can plot the graph the same way like I did, and you can work through it and check whether you were able to get some interesting results. Like I got like October 4 was the best time, and similarly you can plot the graph. And for the same problem, like for the second one, you can see like 9 a.m., noon, and for different timings you can actually plot the graph and see like whether the flight will be late or not. So in summary, you have learned to create a notebook in Azure, and you have imported the data using curl command. You have used pandas to clean and prepare the data. You have used scikit-learn to actually build a machine learning model. So if it is your first time, you have actually seen like, yes, this things can be done pretty easily with the help of scikit-learn, and later you can move on to deep learning and things like that. But yeah, scikit-learn is one of the like user-friendly libraries that to work with. And finally, we have visualized the data using Matplotlib. So yeah, like the session is, I guess it's over, I guess. Yeah. So this is the final thing, like what you guys saw. And yeah, if you guys have any questions related to the session, you guys can actually like unmute yourself and ask the questions, and we'll be happy to answer you guys. So if you guys want to connect with us, you can like connect with us on LinkedIn, Twitter. Feel free to ask questions which you have during the session right now, or yeah. So one more thing, like
Hello.
For the certificate, like Vignesh, just share the link so that
Hi.
yeah, share the link
I
to the
have a doubt regarding the project.
yeah. See your name and
Yeah,
what's
why
your
do we
doubt?
use? My name is Kuna Prithviraj.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah,
What's
why
the
do we
question?
use scikit-learn?
Like scikit-learn is one of the like libraries which is available to us, and it is open source, and you can actually use that library to use those ML algorithms without building them from scratch. So like the people working at scikit-learn have already made those libraries for us, and yeah, it is pretty easy to use. Like instead of like an imported random forest classifier, instead of that you can simply import linear regression, logistic regression, SVM, SVR, and things like that, and you can use that library and simply apply the model. You don't need to build it from scratch. I hope
Yeah,
that
to build a
yeah, you can
machine
build it.
learning model, we can use scikit-learn, right?
Yeah, you can learn it. Yeah, you can actually use scikit-learn. You can use other methods as well. Scikit-learn
Okay.
is not the only one. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, great. Any other questions?
Hello.
Yes.
Can we host Python? Can we like make a model in Python and make a app in Flask and integrate them and host that web app on other?
Yes, the like whatever model that you're building, After building that model, you can save that model, and later, like, you can use Flask or any web application like web framework like Django, and yeah, you can use that model to later make predictions to your web application. So that is quite possible.
Is Azure free?
Yes. Azure is free. Like Azure Notebooks is free, but for using Azure, you need to have a student email ID. So yeah, if you're or like you can sign up with your credit card for 1 year free. So I'll be sharing a form for the certificates to you guys, and other questions if you have, you can ask till that time.
Hi.
Yeah, your name and what's the question?
Yeah, my name is Kuna Prithviraj. I have a doubt again.
Yeah.
Could you explain again about ROC and AUC? I have a
ROC.
little bit confusion. That's why.
Yeah, so it is one of the like curves which is used to tell us whether a model will work on other training sets as well, and it shows us the biases on which a model will be was trained on. So basically, you can have, for example, YouTube algorithm mostly works I'm just saying it like I don't know how it works, but yeah, it could happen
Okay.
like it.
Okay.
Yeah, it could happen like YouTube algorithm always shows the thumbnails of the person, which is like which are mostly following. Yeah, it might be a white person. So mostly the thumbnails of that person or those videos with those thumbnails will be recommended to you. So that is like it makes the algorithm much more biased, and yeah, so that is to recognize that bias. We use the this ROC curve. So it tells us about that. Yeah.
Like somewhat testing purpose, right?
Yes. It is very much used for testing purposes. Like a model should not be biased. So one of the problems with machine learning algorithms is that they are quite biased. Like you can see, like how like some comments on Twitter get so much rating and like so much likes, and yeah, so like this is one of the problems with machine learning. So you need to test that, yeah, before deploying that model. So ROC curve helps us do that.
Okay. In which library ROC and AOC are available?
This is available in the metrics library, like I showed you.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Great. Any other questions? Like the guys, if possible, fill up that Microsoft form. We'll be sending you the certificates based on the like record you have provided to us. So make sure you enter the valid email ID. Otherwise, we won't be able to send you guys the certificates.
Okay. So, okay. Could you suggest me a machine learning project for beginners?
Yeah, so what you can do is like go to Kaggle. They have a machine learning track ready-made for you, and you can try playing with some of the beginner projects. Like they have like Boston dataset, Titanic dataset as well, and just play with those. And you can use Iris. I guess there is another dataset which has been released. Like it is considered equivalent to Iris for beginners. So yeah, like it is called a Penguin dataset. So you can try it with that, and yeah, just play with it. Like go to Kaggle, register on Kaggle, and
Yes.
yeah. So
To do machine learning project as a beginner, which libraries should we aware?
uh,
Hello?
yeah, could you unmute yourself and ask the question again? It was Raj, I guess. Yeah. So what was your question? If you have any other questions, guys, you can unmute yourself and ask, or else we'll be ending the session. Yeah. So
Hello.
yes, Shubham. Yes.
My name is Shubham.
Yeah. Yeah. What's your question?
Yeah, so can you explain about the confusion matrix used classification problem?
Okay. So what happens is like, is my screen visible? Like, is it
Yeah.
Vignesh? Vignesh, are you sharing the screen? I'll just share the screen and tell you guys. Like,
Yes.
yes. So what we did was, when you have the confusion matrix, so like we have applied the confusion matrix to our y-test and predicted values. So it will be comparing both of those values. Like we have predicted some value and it is the actual value, like what needs to be predicted. So on the basis of that, it is making this confusion matrix. So for confusion matrix, like you can see like 1-8, like you can actually check the accuracy of the model through this only. Just do like, and
Yes.
182 plus 51. So you'll get 260 plus 54. So you can actually check the accuracy for the model. It's going to be, yeah, I'll put the brackets. What did I get? Oh, anyways. So what you need to do is that this actually like the confusion matrix actually helps us to know what all results we got were accurately predicted or not. Okay, so we have the predicted class. We have so we got like 86% accuracy. So what we did was like, this is the predicted class, this is the positives, this is these are negative, and this is the actual class. And what we like, the actual class that we wanted and the predicted class was it accurately predicted or not? It tells us about that. So these are true positive values that we get. And if not, if we like the actual class is something else, like the negative values, so it will tell us about that as well. So these are the
Hello.
values which have not been correctly predicted. So confusion matrix tells us about that. Yeah, you can read about it much more about like later into the session, but yeah. So this is the matrix, and this is how the accuracy was calculated. So I was trying to do this accuracy, trying to calculate the accuracy. So you can do that using confusion matrix, and it tells us about whether the model is working correctly or not. Yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Or so FP and FN, what's the difference? False positive, negative.
False positive and false negatives. Like
Yeah.
this is the I need to check that. Okay. Yeah, so what happens is like it just tells about whether the thing you have predicted has been correctly predicted or not. So like it is true positive, like what you wanted to predict has been predicted, so it is true positive. False negative is what you didn't want to predict has not been predicted, so this is like false negative. And true negatives is that what you wanted to like what you didn't want to predict, and like if you got the incorrect results, know what I'm saying. I actually need to search
Yes.
about. Yeah, I didn't get. Yeah, I'll need to search about it and might be able to like get back to you later. But yeah, so this is like it mainly is used to tell us whether the model is working correctly or not. That is one thing like you can take. Um,
Okay.
yeah. Yes. Any other questions? Yeah. If you guys don't have any questions, we can end the session. So yeah. So like it was really great having you guys. So we were able to get around what 40 people, and we like most of most of them have actually left. So we had around 60 people joining in for the session. So it is really great that you guys are really invested into your learning, and hope we were able to provide some value and were able to help you guys understand the concepts in machine learning. So you can actually connect with us, and the like Vignesh has shown you the email handles, the handles for the Twitter and LinkedIn. So you can connect with us and tell us about what you felt about the session. So yeah, if you guys don't have any doubts, we can end this call. And yeah, Vignesh, if you have anything to add.
Hello.
Yeah, yeah,
When
Dinesh.
the next session?
For the next session, I guess like it will be in the next week. Maybe like it will be with my other friend. So I'll let you know like through LinkedIn and Twitter. You guys will be able to know about the sessions.
Okay. On your your LinkedIn handle.
Yeah. So I'll always share the information through that.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, the certificates will be mailed to you guys. So like you will get the certificates by tomorrow. And also the recording and the PPTs, like the PPTs have been shared already. So access it through GitHub, fork the project, star it if you want, do anything with it. So like, yeah. So I guess like that is it. So we can end the session. If you guys have any questions, you can connect with us. Any other questions after the session, you can message me on LinkedIn. Vignesh will be able to like help you out, and me too. So yeah. So I guess thank you guys for attending the session, and yeah, see you later. Yeah, stay safe. Yeah, great. Yeah. So I'll end the recording, and yeah, you guys can leave.